Hello, everyone. We are live. This is Aaron Roy with Teachable. Today, I have with me the wonderful Sarah Doody, who I've had the chance to actually watch a workshop with before. We're going to get started with in just a few moments. For those that are joining us, I already see some folks writing in the YouTube comments. What we would love in these first few moments is just let us know where you're joining from, what you're excited to learn today, and that you could see and hear us okay. Before we get into the wonderful content of Sarah's workshop, we just want to make sure everything works technically, so there's no glitches or things we need to solve later. So the folks I see joining from sunny Colorado, from the cold and cloudy UK, and from Long Island, New York, let us. I'm in New York as well today. Let us know.
I was in New York for 13 years. Like, I'm always in New York.
Forever.
I earned
Forever. Madrid, Spain, Brazil. Great. You could see us. You could hear us. That's wonderful. That's what we like to hear. Like I said, we'll get started in just a few moments. For those who haven't joined us today, how this workshop is going to work is Sarah has a whole bunch of content she's going to be going through, the 6 steps for 6 easy ways to improve your UX portfolio. We're going to try to leave time at the end for a little bit of Q&A. So as you have questions today, feel free to put them in the chat, even as the session goes on. I'll be watching that chat. If anything's pressing, I'll bring it to Sarah's attention. But other than that, we'll try to leave time at the end to go through some of these questions. As someone who works in product and knows the importance of UX, I would say use this time with Sarah as an incredible resource because this stuff matters. I learn from these workshops, and for everyone who's with us today, if anything is unclear, ask that question. This is an expert. We have an actual person here today who could teach you. So use that to your advantage.
Aaron, I think you also have such a great perspective because you hire UX people. And then I think too, some of these principles and tutorials we have are really valuable once you are hired. And it's not just learning how to present your work for the purposes of an interview. If you want to make an impact on a design you created or presenting user research findings or something, all of these principles are pretty transferable. It's just a different deliverable.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, with that, it looks like folks are starting to trickle in. For anyone who joins us late, one last note before I hand it over to Sarah. There will be a replay available. So if you're watching today and you're like, wow, I really should rewatch this point, or hey, I need to go back and catch that tidbit of something.
It's so fast.
Yeah, exactly. Do it. There's a replay available. Feel free to hit pause. Feel free to check it back out. And if you're joining us late, don't worry. We'll send the replay out via email as well. We promise you won't miss anything. With that, Sarah, some of these folks know you, some might not. I'm going to kick it to you and bring your presentation up. Let's get started.
Great. So it's there, and I
see it perfectly.
All right, and I just have to hit play here, and we're good, right?
Everything looks good. Everything sounds good. I will be backstage. Call me if you need anything. I'll be right back.
All right. Thanks, Aaron. So good morning, everyone. As Aaron said, I have been working in UX for a while. And in case some of you don't know me, just kind of 30-second summary, I actually created General Assembly's first 12-week UX immersive back in 2011, which I can't believe that's a decade ago, but it's been so cool to see that program evolve. And maybe some of you have taken that program. I also founded something called the UX Portfolio Formula, which is a UX career accelerator that helps you create your portfolio. I've been working in UX for 18 years. I had to update this slide last night because I realized it was a little bit out of date. But I do a lot of speaking and teaching and writing. And Aaron and I were just talking about skiing. I'm a big skier. I was just out on the mountain on Monday. So you might see some skiing pictures on my Instagram. But a little bit about me. Before we get started, though, I really encourage you to go grab a pen, pencil, piece of paper, because I know as much as you love to multitask and take notes digitally, I think you're going to want a piece of paper because I have a really strategic way for you to take some notes so that you can leave with almost like an action item list prioritized of changes that you can make to your portfolio. So grab that now. Also make sure, don't be the multitasker. We're going to go through a lot of really hands-on tutorials that you're going to want to be seeing on the screen not just listening to my voice while you're doing something in another tab. I know I've even been guilty of that sometimes. And I really encourage you to stick around because we do have a special promotion happening with Teachable to give you a limited discount on my UX Portfolio Formula program, which I will tell you about in a little bit. But I want to do a little bit of research right now because I'm also a user researcher. So what is the number one struggle that you have when it comes to your portfolio? And I am going to look at the answers over in YouTube here just to see if you guys are chiming in here. I'm guessing some of them might be, don't know what to write in your case study.
Well, there's also a smidge of a delay. So I will say the number one struggle that I have always is organizing info. Organizing info, right? I have like a whole bunch of information. I never know how to present it. Like, should I use problem approach outcome framework? I don't know what to do.
Yep. Or how many projects should you include, right? What if you've been working in the industry for a while and you have 15 projects or something? That's probably too many. So,
and I see in the chat perfectionism, like the comments are trickling in now. I'll pop backstage again.
Probably imposter syndrome, which I hear about all the time, doubting your own skills and experience, finding the time to do it. So we'll revisit some of those answers, but I bet you I could predict what they are because I've done so much research on this. But I want to propose a little bit of a, let's say, journey map. It doesn't look like a journey map, but tell me if this sounds like you. So at some point, maybe last weekend or last month, or this is going to happen to you this coming weekend, you think to yourself, how do I make a portfolio? Or how do I create an awesome resume? Or how do I prepare for job interviews? And the first thing you do is you go to Google. And then what happens is you see all these results. So maybe you click on one and then you have 20, 30,000 results and you quickly get overwhelmed. So instead of trying to go through those search results and kind of vet them and find the best resources, you just give up and you go over to maybe Quora, the question and answer website, and you do the same thing. How to make a UX portfolio tips, etc. And then you realize a lot of these answers are just people like giving random advice or very surface level tips. And they're not really telling you how to do these things, right? And then you go to YouTube and you do the exact same thing. And maybe you have stumbled across my YouTube videos, which are pretty high ranking in the portfolio space, but you get into this total hamster wheel, this research cycle where you're all over the place. But the problem is you get lost in all this research and you don't actually end up taking action. So I want to help you avoid this giant cluster of an experience of creating your portfolio and help you make it faster with way less stress so that you can spend your time doing things that matter, like developing authentic relationships with people, leveraging LinkedIn, researching the companies you're going to interview at, and things like that. So you are probably, maybe we have this in the chat, you're probably tired of kind of trying to DIY this whole thing and it's not working for you. And I think we heard this earlier, you are starting to have that imposter syndrome sink in. And you might even be thinking, like, am I really a UX person if I can't even make a portfolio? I've heard that often in a lot of the research I have done. And you wish it could just be as simple as you sit down, you make your portfolio in a weekend or a couple of weekends, then you make your resume in a day, then you prepare for your interviews and you do amazing at them, and then you get your job. That's kind of the dream, right? Well, hopefully by the end of today, you will be able to tackle that portfolio piece because, like I said, we have these 6 really hands-on tutorials to help you create your portfolio faster. And honestly, if you invest the time to create an awesome portfolio, that's going to give you the content that you need to then go write a more effective resume. And it's going to give you the content that you're going to need to talk through in your job interviews. So before we get started, though, I want to go back in time and tell you about a problem I had early in my career, because I may be a ways ahead of you in my career, but I did share a problem that I think you may have experienced or are currently experiencing. So way back in 2006, I was very fortunate to be working at a corporate company in Portland, Oregon, with 2,000 or 3,000 employees worldwide. And I had just discovered the world of user experience. I was actually making banner ads and marketing websites for this giant software company. But I thought to myself, I don't want to make banner ads and marketing sites anymore. I want to do this UX stuff. So I started working with some friends in Silicon Valley, doing UX for them, studying UX, and trying to get that experience so I could actually apply to UX jobs. And then I realized I didn't have a portfolio. So I rushed to create a portfolio. And this is what it looked like. It was a metal binder that we printed out pages and put them inside. And it was just all screenshots of websites and other websites. And for some reason, I decided to include some branding projects as well, which is a very big mistake. But the point is that this was not super effective at all. And even though I was spending so many late nights and weekends working on my portfolio, I was not getting job offers. Through some miracle in hindsight, that portfolio was getting me interviews, but I did not do well in the interviews. And as a result, I was not getting job offers. And I realized something totally had to change. Like, what I was doing was not leading to the results I was seeking. And so I kind of took some time to think about it and complain to some friends and just try and figure out what I was doing wrong. And I realized I didn't really have a really solid strategy or plan for my portfolio. I was just dumping screenshots, literally printing them. I'd send the file to like Kinko's or something, print it out on this nice paper, and then shove it in this binder. And that wasn't working. And the reason that wasn't working is because it was just screenshots. And I didn't have a solid story and explanation for each project. So even though maybe the portfolio got me the interviews, once I got to the interviews, I didn't really have a lot to say, which was a massive problem. So I decided to get really, really serious in the spring of 2007, redo my portfolio, do it with a proper strategy. And then within 2 months, I was hired as a UX designer and moved from Portland, Oregon to New York to work at a startup. And all of that happened in 2 months, which you might be thinking that is insane. It could never work for me, but I assure you that 2-month time frame is pretty average based on the now thousands of people that I've worked with over the past couple of years. But one thing I was really reflecting on a couple of months ago was how much that original portfolio was a massive catalyst in my career. And I made this timeline. If you're a graphic designer, you might cringe, but I feel like this timeline does a good job at just explaining my career progression, which I don't think would have happened if I had not invested the time to make this portfolio. So I made this portfolio in 2007, and then I moved to New York and I got hired at another company in 2010. I decided to switch jobs. And then in 2011, I wrote an article about storytelling in UX, which went super viral. And then someone read that article and they were at General Assembly and they said, oh, well, come help us with this UX thing we want to make. So I did that. And then I did some more writing and was featured in this article in the New York Times. And then I ended up creating this whole world of UX portfolio courses. And I wanted to do this timeline because I honestly think I would not have done all these things and been invited to speak at all these conferences and done so much writing and blogging and YouTubing and things if I had not created that portfolio. And the reason is that portfolio gave me so much confidence, not just in my skills, but it also forced me to learn how to communicate my ideas, my design decisions, etc., which helped me excel once I was hired, which helped me write articles, which helped me become a better teacher. So all that to say, your portfolio is not just about getting another job. It can also give you the confidence and kind of other skills to do a lot of other things. And today now, I spend about 85% of my time teaching and coaching people in this UX portfolio program I have. So let's keep going here. But I mentioned, it took me 2 months to get hired. And on average, that's pretty much the same for many people I've worked with. They are at all different stages of their career. Some of them are just coming out of boot camps. Some of them have been in UX for a while. And it's all different types of UX people, researchers, designers, interns, even UX writers, and things like that. And I always just love to share a story about Sydney, because she was the very first person who got hired after attending the super beta version of what I teach. And she was transitioning from graphic design into graphic design to UX design. And I love the quote she said. She said, the interview went so well. They loved how I understood. They loved how I went through my process. Now I understand the UX of my UX portfolio. How ironic, right? And that's one thing I want you to think about, like the UX of your portfolio. So to ensure you have an awesome UX in your portfolio, we're going to go through these 6 easy ways to create a really strong first impression, to show your process and your skills, to actually tell the story. And I'm going to show you how to do that. And then you'll also have a lot of great tips and ideas of how you can more effectively communicate your projects in the interviews. So hopefully you got a piece of paper, and I kind of designed this way for you to take notes because I think it's going to be very effective. And like I said, I want you to leave today with a little bit of a prioritized project plan for your portfolio. So divide your paper up like this, or do a screenshot so you can rewatch this and take notes again or something like that. But we'll come back to this. I'll show you how to do it, but just make sure you have your piece of paper because you're going to use it after we get through question 1. So first question of our 6 questions to evaluate and improve your portfolios. Question 1, do you know who you are as a designer? Now, what do I mean by this? I mean, your portfolio has to reflect who you are and what you've done and where you want to go in the future. And in the same way that a product has a great mission statement or value proposition, whatever you want to call it, you need one of those statements as well. Now let's look at an example here. So, hello, I'm Sarah. I'm a UX designer and I want to make products that help people. So this is nice because it's short, but when I look at this, I see a lot of problems. And the first problem I see is that this just is very vague. I'm a UX designer. UX designer, the term is such an umbrella term. It could mean so many things. We don't know, does this person do research? Do they also do prototyping? Do they do visual design? Who knows? They don't tell us. So it's too vague. Thousands of other people are calling them UX designers as well. And the other, the other problem is this statement of, I want to make products that help people. To me, it just feels almost like clip art, but in the form of words. What I mean by that, it's super cliche. Like, no one wants to make products that make it harder to do something. It just kind of stating the obvious. And I think if you're a recruiter or hiring manager and you're reading something like, I want to make products that help people 500 times a day, it doesn't even register for you. And I did a Google search for I'm a UX designer and products that help people, and it got almost 900 results. So that means 900 web pages had those exact phrases, I'm a UX designer and products that help people. And it's probably way more because I did this screenshot over a year ago. But recruiters and hiring managers, when they see that, it's just like, doesn't register. They see it over and over. So what you need to do is create an about me, I call it a compass statement, that is much more specific and unique to you. So here's an example. I'm Sarah. I'm a user researcher and experience designer with 5 years working in e-commerce and healthcare. I'm passionate about educating stakeholders and colleagues about the value of design. So this is much better because we're not just saying I'm a UX designer, we're getting specific. I'm a researcher and experience designer. I don't mention visual design, so it's probably safe to assume I'm not doing pixel perfect stuff. I mentioned the industries, the years of experience, and then something a little different than I want to make products that help people. So this, is much more specific than what we had in our before. Yes, the improved version is a little bit longer, but it's a trade-off. Do you want to just have something that's super short, or do you want to have something that is a little bit longer, but is a lot more engaging and gives you an opportunity to tell the recruiter or hiring manager more about you even before they click something or read your resume? So here's how this little project plan works that you're going to make. In your piece of paper, I want you to ask yourself, do you have a really clear statement about yourself? And then use this little ranking system I made, or make up your own, but it's probably just easier to use mine. Does it need work? Is it good for now? Or did you totally nail it and you have an amazing statement about you? So this is what we're going to do for each of the questions. That way, at the end of this, you can look back and look at all the ones that say needs work and prioritize those when you go off and use all the tips today to improve your portfolio. So question number 2, does each project have an accompanying story you can tell? Now, I know that you've read, 10,000 articles and tweets that say tell a story, but no one really explains how to do that in the context of your portfolio. So first of all, you can't make the mistake that I made and assume that your pictures or screenshots, deliverables, are worth 1,000 words. You need to explain them and you need to do a little bit of storytelling around them. So let's take a look at some examples here. First of all, imagine for the purposes of today, the examples I'm showing you are a portfolio that is a PDF. We're not going to debate PDF versus website. You can go read articles I have about that. So right now we're looking at 2 pages of a PDF. And what is the problem here? Well, we have these visuals, and then at the top, these headlines are just very vague. For example, at the left, user flow of the customer experience. Well, obviously that's a user flow. Same thing at the right. Obviously, those are kind of high fidelity designs. So this focuses on the deliverable. It doesn't give us any context of what the heck we're looking at. And if I'm looking at this for the first time, I don't even know, for example, to the left, what is this user flow? Who knows? So let's take the one at the left and think to ourselves, how can we improve that? So this is a much better version of that one at the left, right? I'll let you kind of just absorb this, but we still have the user flow. But what do? We added context, and we added context through, I don't think you can see my mouse, but through adding headline at the top. So Jenny's son is missing at the amusement park, and uses the app to report him as missing. Oh, well, now we know what the user flow was. Then you'll notice we introduced little photos of the people using this, because probably in prior slides, we've introduced the users or personas. And then it's a little hard to see, but underneath each of the screens, there's text, and that text is a label for each screen. So I know the first one at the left is the screen where someone reports a missing child. Then after that, it's the next steps, et cetera, et cetera. This is what I mean when I say you need to add context. So this is much better than that one at the left, right? The other thing I just want to address, because it comes up every single time, is how long should a project in my portfolio be? So I will not give you, the number of slides or the number of words, because the answer is it depends. What I will tell you is what you should consider in terms of the anatomy of a project in your portfolio. So you should have one slide that is the title slide, which is kind of framing or setting up what the project is. It's giving just enough context so that someone knows, for example, who was the client or the company, what was the problem or goal, maybe what was your role. Maybe other nice things to have might be the size of the team, the timeline. Maybe this garnered amazing results, like it saved the company millions of dollars, or it was #1 in the App Store or something. So think to yourself, what interesting tidbits of information and context could be helpful? Then as we go into the details, you have to kind of think about it like whenever you used to write science reports back in school, you want to tell them the method. So you don't just want to say, I did user research, and then I did this, and then I did that. For every single step that you did, you want to describe, why did you do that step? Why did you decide to use that research method? What did you learn from the research? How did that research inform product decisions? So we don't just want to know what you did. We want to know, why did you do it, and what happened, and how did that inform what you did next? So that's kind of how you can think about the anatomy of each project in your portfolio, so you can more effectively tell the story and not just have kind of screenshots and vague descriptions. So think to yourself, in your portfolio, has the way that you've written about each project, or is the way you've written about each project maybe too vague? If so, then you probably need to go back and do a little bit more thinking around adding context, such as we saw in this one. Okay, so rank yourself for question 2, and let's move on to question 3. Are the images you provide in your portfolio providing value, or are they causing distraction? Now, this one is very near and dear to me because every time I do portfolio reviews, I see this mistake every single time. And that mistake is people do not make it easy for me to consume the visuals. And yes, sometimes in UX, we have pages that are really tall, or journey maps that are really wide, right? And it's tricky. But you can't just shrink it down really small to shove it on the page and make it fit, because then what happens? I can't read any of it. So let's look at an example of what we can do to make sure our images are super easy for people to see, and so that people can really get the impact of what we did. So imagine we're looking at someone's portfolio right now, and this is literally a slide in it. So there's a wireframe, and it says, next I made some wireframes. Great. The problem is that we don't know what this wireframe is. It looks nice, but we have no idea what we're looking at. So how could we improve it? The first thing we could do is add some context through giving it a title at the top left, right? This is the customer dashboard. Okay, now at least we know what we're looking at. Then at the right, we have this description of what it is. So this is where account managers can see details about each customer and browse between different customers. Great. Now we're getting a little bit deeper and helping the user of our portfolio understand that wireframe. But the problem now is it's a very detailed wireframe, and I'm not sure, like, what is so amazing? What was the heart of it? What was the piece of it that made it so great in terms of a dashboard? So then I evolved it again, and I contextualized the problem and the solution. And the problem was going between the customers and the customer list and the customer detail page. That back and forth was not a good experience. So we added a left column at the left of the wireframe, a customer list, so that when you click there, it just brings up their detail in the right, and it eliminates that page back and forth that the product had before. So now we're starting to hear, okay, this is the dashboard, and this was the problem, and that left part was really critical to making the dashboard experience great. But what's the problem? That left column is kind of hard to read as it is, because the wireframe is shrunk down pretty small, so we can't see the details of that left column. So this example would be like a 15 out of 10. It's incredible. It helps us see the details of that left because we made a copy of that wireframe and zoomed into that left column, as you can see over at the far right of the screen. So this would be the optimal way to show this wireframe and provide the context so that if someone saw this, they would not just see, oh, this person made a nice looking wireframe, but they can understand the bits and pieces of that wireframe that helped solve key challenges that the users were facing. So if I saw something like this versus something like this, guess which portfolio I'm going to be more attracted to? I mean, the answer is obvious, right? But I just want you to see that difference because so many of you do what we saw in those previous versions. Now, I don't want you to freak out and think, oh my gosh, I could never do this. This is so difficult. I'm not good at design. I mean, this is like basic Keynote and PowerPoint skills of cropping things and adding text. So this is not, you can't use the excuse of, I'm not good at graphic design, because to me, this is not exactly graphic design. This is just like basic presentation skills. But the good news is now you know how to do this. So these small changes can make such a big impact. And just to see all 4 versions kind of in a shrunk down way, so you can just see the difference much, much better the way we had it at our final one, this one. So ask yourself, do these images in my portfolio, do they have the proper context? Have I pointed out the details? What can I do to kind of zoom in on a part of the interface that was really important? A part of a user flow, right? Maybe you have a user flow that's really, really wide, but you really only worked on this part over here in the middle. Well, zoom in on that and tell us more about that. So probably in the chat, you're saying mind blown, because that happens every time I teach this. But it's just one of those things where until you see it, it may never have crossed your mind to do things like that. So question 4, did you take the time to curate the projects in your portfolio for each role you apply to? Now, you will probably think to yourself, well, what if I'm just getting my first UX job? You know, how do I curate the projects? This is a tip that you can just tuck away for later in your career, because as you get to work on more projects, you will then have an amazing library of projects that you can pick and choose to show for each role you apply to. So I still want to talk through this, but if you're getting your first UX role, just save this tip for later. So your portfolio and also your resume is not a one size fits all. You should always be tailoring it. And I'll tell you specific ways to tailor it, but one of them is to choose different projects depending on which role you apply to. So imagine we are applying to a job that mentions things about research, like user research, quantitative and qualitative experience, e-commerce, and healthcare. That's what this job description mentions. But over at the right, you are fortunate to have 6 projects that you could include in your portfolio. The thing is, we don't want to include all 6 because that might be a little overwhelming. And there may be other ones that just don't really align with what we're looking for in this job description. So what you need to do is study the job description and use it almost as a filter of the projects that you're going to include. So let's go through them really quickly. Should we include project 1? It talks about usability testing for a new mobile checkout. Definitely. Project 2 is an interactive prototype for healthcare. Definitely matches up. Project 3, survey for finance startup. I would say yes, it's research. It's a little quantitative. Project 4, qualitative research for e-commerce. Definitely. Project 5 and 6, I don't think we would want to include them because they don't specifically mention UX writing in the job description. It sounds more like a research role. And for project 6, it doesn't really mention design sprints or anything like that. So in the interest of keeping the portfolio shorter, but also more targeted so that these 4 projects really shine a spotlight on our skills, that's how we could truly tailor the portfolio to the job we are applying to. And we choose these 4. The other ways that we could tailor our portfolio would be simply rearranging them. So maybe you only have 3 projects and you're like, Sarah, I can't cut anything. It'll seem too shallow. Okay, but when you apply to the job, maybe project 3 is more relevant to the role. Well, if it's a PDF, like move those up and make it the first project. You could also tweak how you write about the project or the area of the process that you focus on in that project. So there's ways to get creative with that, but I just wanted to point that out because so many people just use the same portfolio. And when I talk to recruiters and hiring managers, they say they really appreciate when it is tailored, and they might not even know it's tailored, but the feedback I get from my students too is when they do this, they get a lot more interviews, and that's great. So question 4, did you take the time to curate the projects for each role? If you didn't, you're going to do it in the future. And it doesn't take hours and hours, especially if your portfolio is a PDF, because it's going to be hard to do that if it's a website. Okay, question 5. Do the images in your portfolio show the process and not just the final product? So another mistake I see all the time, and you've probably read many articles and tweets telling you to show the process, but you think to yourself, how do I show the process? Well, we have to get more diligent about documenting what we do through the entire process. So just kind of side note here, if you don't already have a little folder where you're dropping different screenshots, or you're dropping photos, or you're dropping versions of wireframes, I would do that so that when it's time to make your portfolio, you're not scrambling to find all these screenshots in your screenshot folder and photos on your phone and all this stuff. So that is one way to set yourself up to then be able to show the process. And I'm going to show you how to do that in a little example here. So I will say too, in the example I'm going to show you, I'm not dictating that every single project must have a storyboard and must have the other things I'm going to show you. I'm just showing this as an example. So some of the ways that you can show your process, you could include a storyboard, right? And what have we done here? We haven't just taken a photo of the storyboard and put it in the middle of the slide, and that's all. We took the extra 10 minutes to add some context to the storyboard. I should have a before and after. You can see how bad that would look, but this is what you should aim for. You should aim to have that storyboard and then add some context. So I did a storyboard for this product I worked on. It was kind of a prototype that never launched of this product that would help parents get reunited with their children if they went missing at an amusement park. And this was the storyboard. I'm not going to read through it, but you can notice it's much better than just having a photo of the storyboard with no text or anything. People are able to see each kind of scene in the storyboard. There's little call outs, etc. The other thing I would say is my drawing is not the best, but you can see there's stick people, there's phones, there's roller coasters. This was not for Disney. But I would say if your drawing or your storyboard or the photo of the whiteboard is so illegible that no one can see anything and it just looks like someone used a marker with their eyes closed and stood at a whiteboard, don't include it. That's just a waste of space. But if the drawings or whiteboards or whatever are really at least decipherable, then I would say include them. But I can't tell you how many times I've seen photos of someone's like little notebook or a whiteboard, and it honestly looks like a 2-year-old took a marker. And I just think, why am I looking at this? It just looks like scribbles. So don't do that. Okay. So maybe after you have a storyboard, then you're going to introduce your personas. Now, oftentimes you have these persona documents that you spent, probably too much time trying to perfect. And then you take that and you shrink it down and you say, okay, here's the persona. Well, no one's going to read that, and they probably can't read it because the text is so small because you shrunk it down to fit in your portfolio. So what I really recommend is you create kind of abbreviated versions or mini versions of your personas or users, And then if you wanted to, I could see maybe having one of the detailed personas for, in this case, we have 3. So maybe we have one of the detailed personas for, say, the parents of the missing child. But introducing your personas like this, it's almost like introducing characters in a movie, because then when we refer back to them, as we'll see in a couple of slides, it just helps the user of your portfolio stay engaged and not get lost. So after the personas, then maybe we're showing some user flows. And again, these user flows, I felt like I could include them because my drawings were quite clear. I labeled the user flows, etc. Then I had some high fidelity screens or wireframes, and I explained them. And then I got into these higher fidelity prototype screens where I also included the people, the persona, the users, so that for the person going through this, they don't feel lost. There's this quote that I heard, and I can't remember where I heard it, but it goes like this: when you confuse, you lose. And that applies to your portfolio, that applies to marketing, that applies to anything. So by having our personas kind of like follow us, having our users, little photos of our users follow us through as we're presenting things, we could even have them on here. It helps the user not get lost, the user of your portfolio not get lost. And especially helpful if they're seeing this for the first time, which is much better than just saying, next I did some visual design, right? I'm like, visual design of what? What are these screens? What's happening? Who are the users? How did we get here? What happens next, right? Much, much better when it's done like this. So question 5 for you: did you take the time to show your process for each project instead of just showing final deliverables? I will also say, because I'm asked this so many times, what if the project I worked on didn't follow, quote, the normal UX process? Well, I don't know what the normal UX process is, because every time I work on a project, it's a little bit different. We might want to do a bunch of research, but the client's timeline or budget gets cut at the last minute, and we may not get to do research. Is that the perfect UX process? No. Is that reality? Yes. So I would never just go make up research so I could have the perfect UX process. That would be lying. So don't be afraid if your project didn't follow the, quote, normal process. The point is not to show people this perfect UX process. It's to show people what happened in reality on that project. So don't worry and obsess about that, because I feel like that's something that the UX community does a lot based on the insane amount of DMs and questions I get related to that. Just show what you did. So side note about that is over. Question 6, do you have more than just coursework and mock projects for your portfolio? So what do I mean by this? This really applies to people who are coming into UX through some education program or boot camp. And I want to address this question because it comes up all the time. Recruiters and hiring managers, there's kind of some articles and commentary out there that recruiters and hiring managers, can, quote, spot a bootcamp portfolio from a mile away, or they're getting burnt out at seeing the same projects over and over. So I want to help you understand their perspective so that you'll be motivated to come up with unique projects that will help set you apart. And I'll tell you how to find these projects so you don't email me after and say, how do I find projects for my portfolio? So imagine you're a UX recruiter in Chicago and you need to hire a junior UX designer. And lucky for you, the UX Bootcamp of Chicago just had a graduation and there's tons of people available. Well, this is amazing. So you, the recruiter, start looking at the portfolios and you see these portfolios that have wonderfully presented visuals and deliverables with context, explanations, etc. And then you start looking at everyone else's portfolios and you see the same stuff. So as a recruiter or hiring manager, just put yourself in their shoes. You would be a little skeptical and you would start to wonder, well, who actually did what on these projects, right? It's completely realistic. This is not a stretch of the imagination at all. So instead of saying to yourself, how do I get more projects if no one will hire me, and the chicken and the egg, and begging people to help you find projects, to me, this is a UX problem that you can solve on your own, because the best designers and researchers and UX people out there, they're not just problem solvers. They are what I like to call problem spotters. And what I mean by problem spotters is like constantly being in this state of observing the world around them and almost like as second nature, noticing things that could be improved and optimized. And once you start doing this, you won't be able to stop and you'll never see the world the same again. So you're welcome, but also I'm sorry because I get so mad at experiences that I see that are not very good. But how can you become a problem spotter so that you can identify really unique projects that you could put in your portfolio? So here's how you become a problem spotter. For the next 7 days, commit to documenting all of the problems around you and slowing down, noticing things, and write it down or take a photo or take a screenshot. I do this all the time. And then you'll have a ton of problems to solve, probably more than you know what to do with. So for example, last year I tweeted, "Dear online clothing stores, I wish I could set my preferred sizes so I do not have to filter and add my sizes every single time I do a search," right? That got 70 likes. So if I needed to come up with projects for my portfolio, I might look at the experience of search in e-commerce and how maybe it could be improved by letting me have my preferred sizes saved, or I'm not sure what the solution is, but that's the problem. Another problem, which I tweeted almost a year ago at the beginning of our pandemic world: "Dear food bloggers, please put a skip to recipe link at the bottom or at the top of your blog post. Not everyone wants to read the 2000 word dramatic essay about the recipe, right? We can all relate to this." And it got 114 likes. I mean, if I was looking for a project to work on my portfolio, I might want to explore recipe websites and the UX of them and the recipe detail page. And probably there's other problems once I start going down the rabbit hole of recipes. That is how you become a problem spotter, so that you can diversify the projects in your portfolio and maybe have things that are different than other people. And also, I believe that when you have these projects that you spotted, these problems you spotted, that story of how you spotted that problem, there's just something kind of magical about it when you can go into an interview and say, okay, for example, this one guy, this is a true story. He did this self-initiated project about the UX of buying train tickets at the metro in Paris. And he explained, like, he was trying to get to the airport or something, and he thought he was going to miss his flight because the ticket thing was so bad and blah, blah, blah. And hearing that experience, it adds a level of realness that is engaging, that can help people stay engaged in the projects in your portfolio. So, and it's real life. So that always stands out as well. So think to yourself, do you need to diversify the projects? And if so, now you know how to do it. You need to be a problem spotter. Maybe you can partner up with other people here today or UX friends and all commit to be problem spotters for a week, and then compare notes and see what cool problems you could solve in the world. I probably have like 4 just from this morning, even the UX of getting this keynote set up this morning. Okay, so that's question 6. So now you have your piece of paper with your 6 squares and hopefully a prioritized list of how you can improve your portfolio, because today you learned how you can create that really solid first impression, right? with that about me statement or compass statement. You also learned how to choose the right projects so you can tailor them to the role, how you actually show the process and tell a story and stand out from other people by having unique projects, but also by going the extra mile and adding that context, not just saying this is the wireframe because everyone knows it's a wireframe. We want to know what wireframe is it, right? And then if you do all these things, you will be able to talk more effectively about those projects in interviews. And you also learn that, by having a really solid strategy, you can create your portfolio quickly because you're probably obsessing over the wrong details. And as you saw, adding text, zooming into parts of wireframes, it's not going to take you weeks. It's going to take you like a couple of hours. It's not that difficult. You don't need to be that amazing at graphic design, as we saw. It's really about using text, using basic presentation skills to help your work shine more. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. And the process to create your portfolio is the same no matter what stage you're at in your career. This is important because a lot of people say to me, well, I've been in UX for 15 years or 1 year. Like, how do I make my portfolio? The answer is it's the same process. Everything you learn today applies whether you're at year 1 or year 20. The difference is the content that you're going to have in your portfolio and the types of projects that you have worked on. So by now, you're probably sufficiently inspired and overwhelmed because you have a lot of ways to improve your portfolio. And that's great. And you know that you want to have an awesome portfolio to feel confident going into these interviews so you cannot have that overwhelm of constantly Googling stuff. I'm sure in the chat, many of you are going to be agreeing with these next 3 slides. I always like to know which person are you, but I know there's a delay. So I went back in time. Okay, so you want to have that portfolio so you can be more confident going to interviews. Maybe you've been working on your portfolio for weeks or months and you're really confused about the actual how to do it, right? Everyone tells you what to do. No one's telling you how to do it. Well, now you have a ton of the how. Or maybe you already have a portfolio and you're not getting interviews and offers. Well, by now, hopefully you've been able to troubleshoot some of the areas of your portfolio that you could potentially improve so that you can stand out a little bit more. But if you are relating to any of these challenges or stages that you are at or that I just mentioned, I want you to know that this does not have to be as overwhelming and stressful as it may have been. It doesn't have to be like this anymore, right? And I created this new visual, which I'm curious what you guys think of it. But I feel like so many UX people get stuck in what I call the cycle of sabotage. And this is not meant to send you spiraling. It's meant to just help you see how what maybe you're doing right now is not working. So you see a role that looks perfect, and then what do? You think, oh my gosh, I'm not ready to apply. And so you rush and you are in this roller coaster of, this is amazing. Oh my gosh, I looked at someone else's portfolio and mine is so terrible now. So you try and reverse engineer theirs and it's this up, down, and then you think, I'm going to trash it and start over. But what happens? That's maybe 3 weeks long. You keep doing this over and over. And next thing you know, 3 weeks has become 3 months. And you keep rushing through this cycle of sabotage and you're never happy with your portfolio. And I really, really am passionate about helping you stop this in your career so you can get hired faster and so you can go into more interviews with a lot more confidence. Because when you have that solid story of what you did and why you did it, and when you're really confident in your portfolio, that's going to allow you to go into interviews with a lot more confidence in your ability to talk about those projects. And that is going to come through in your body language, the way you talk about those projects, etc. Ben, He got hired at H&M a little while ago, but he said that he was able to make his portfolio not just because of the feedback I was giving him, but because he had a solid framework for telling that story of each project in a way that was not just scratching the surface. So I told you I have a special thing happening with Teachable for the program I run called the UX Portfolio Formula. I want to take maybe 2.5 minutes to tell you a little bit about it, but it is a step-by-step system that gives you everything you need to create your portfolio, create an awesome resume, and prepare for job interviews. So cross your fingers, you get hired. It's a totally on-demand program, so you can do it on your own time, on your own schedule. You don't have to show up every Tuesday and Thursday or something. As with everything I showed you today, everything I do is really actionable. So there are Google Docs for writing your case studies. There's Google Doc templates for writing your resume bullets, how to write your bullets effectively. There's UX portfolio templates. There's a private community. And it's just literally everything you need to create your portfolio faster. I'm going to skip over some of these, but I kept track of the salaries last year of people hired, and it hit $5 million in combined salaries, which totally blows my mind. So when you join the UX Portfolio Formula, like I said, you'll have access to the program that helps you create your portfolio, write an awesome resume, and prepare for those job interviews. And like I said, I help you do it through tons of super actionable templates. These are UX portfolio templates. Isla got hired at an insurance company, and she said the portfolio templates helped me organize the projects, and they were such a time saver. These are just some screenshots of people's portfolios. Even though they all use the same template, they don't look the same because the template is just like the scaffolding, kind of. You know, once you put your content in, it's not like all the portfolios look the same. Megan made her portfolio and got an 80% pay increase. She also applied to 15 jobs and got 10 interviews, which is mind-blowing. Then I have a website portfolio template. It's for Wix, but if you want to use something else, just consider these a bunch of wireframes. People have used this to make tons of portfolio websites that look like this, or is a delay, this, or these ones. And then the resumes too. These are some of the resumes people have created. I know they're super small and I'm breaking my own rules, but the context here is a little different. And the whole process really just helps you, as Melody said, articulate my process. Once I was on an interview, I started to get second and third callbacks. And then Melody was hired as a junior UX person at Lowe's Home Improvement, which is amazing. So if you want to join the UX Portfolio Formula and get the portfolio, the resume, and the job interview programs, plus the private community and the templates, and also, in case you're not a visual designer, I have a little kind of 10-lesson course on visual design principles like typography and color and layout and things. Plus, even though I just taught you how to be a problem spotter, I did create a super detailed brief for e-commerce, which gives you probably 18 or 20 pages of a brief. And this is modeled after the briefs I use for projects I work on. This is a fake company, but it very well could be Amazon or Home Depot or Macy's.com or something. And no matter if you're a researcher or a designer or a UX writer, you can read this brief and alarm bells will be going off in your mind and you'll think, oh my gosh, I can make this project or that project or that project. And like I said, in case you're not confident in your visual design skills, we have this 10-lesson visual design course with stuff like alignment and contrast and balance and typography, etc., with, again, super, super visual stuff. So I'm going to skip through a bunch of stuff here. We have a link. I don't know if it's going to show up in the chat or where it is, but it will definitely be emailed to you. I'm going to skip over some stuff here, but for Teachable people, we're giving you guys 7 days to get this for $300 off. So instead of getting in for $997, you can save $300 and get in at $697. But we also have a payment plan. So if that works for you, you can pay over time for 6 months for $129 instead of $189. But seriously, I really wanted today to be an opportunity for you to learn these 6 tips so that no matter what, you can get started like right after this class today and start improving your portfolio with those 6 tips and tutorials. And then if you're thinking to yourself, wow, I have been spending 2 months or 3 months on this already, and I just want to get it done, then feel free to message me if you have questions about UX portfolio formula, and I'm happy to answer them so you can decide what is best for you. I'm sure the chat is blowing up with questions. So Aaron, let's see how many we can blow through.
Sarah, thank you so much. And I do have quite a few questions for you. I know folks were already at time, but we're going to stay back for a few minutes and answer a few questions at least. And for anyone who was looking for that link to Sarah's course, it's in the YouTube description. It's also in the YouTube chat, and we'll send it out after as well. First things first, Sarah, I just want to say thank you. I think, speaking as someone who hires designers, those aren't just tips. Those are like foundations to really help make a strong portfolio. One thing I wanted to share for this group is we actually had a candidate who I think came from General Assembly, and they did a problem spotting exercise in their portfolio where they set like a overview of how they would fix parts of the Seamless app. And although they never worked for Grubhub or Seamless, it stuck with me actually till like now. So like those things do matter. Like
why?
If you don't have, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, what made it stand out to you? Because so often people ask me, is it okay to redesign a product if I didn't ask them or if they didn't pay me or something? And I am not a fan of working for free, but it's not as though this person, did it and sent it off to Seamless for free. Like they used it as they spotted a problem and they solved it, I think is what you're saying. Yeah, no, this is someone who didn't have a ton of experience yet, and they wanted to show knowledge, right? Show how they would approach a problem. They did the reason it stood out is the problem they highlighted with the Seamless app was something that I also thought was a problem, and I'm like, that is a good solution. I'm really glad to hear that's how you would solve that, and it just stood out, even though this was someone who really, they're really early in their career. But without further ado, let's grab a few of these questions. One that I'm sure you get often is, let me bring it on the screen actually, is how can you tailor your so I'll read it in case you can't see it. And that's, how do you tailor your portfolio if it's on a website, right? A lot of folks start with a website. How do you chop these things up? Yeah, I mean, that is why I will say I have strongly advocated that you should make your portfolio a PDF for that reason, because based on the feedback from all of my students, it resoundingly is, as soon as I stopped trying to make my portfolio as a website and made it a PDF, I did it way faster and with less stress, and I was able to actually customize it for each role. So the answer is, honestly, you can't really send Aaron a different version of your portfolio website than you would send me if we were each hiring people. I mean, technically you could, it would just take you a lot of time, I think, to make a custom version for Aaron. So really the reason that I advocate for the PDF is time, stress, and the ability to tailor it. Now, obviously, I think a lot of people assume that the portfolio of a UX designer must be a website. I totally disagree with that. I know plenty of, for example, user researchers that I would not want them to do the wireframing. So why should a user researcher have to make their portfolio as a website? It just makes no sense to me. The notion of, if your portfolio is a website, it demonstrates your UX skills. Like, yes, it can, but it shouldn't be a requirement. And honestly, recruiters and hiring managers, they don't care. What they care about is the content. So something to think about.
I mean, and if you start with the PDF, you can always push the things that you've tested and that you love onto a website. Like they're not precluded.
No, and I always say to people, obviously there's value in a website because of SEO and people are going to Google you, etc. It's nice as a professional to have your website come up, but if your goal is to get hired, you should not waste time making a website in addition to making a portfolio. It just blows my mind when people have a PDF and then they say, okay, I did that and now I have to make the website, and they put all of the exact content from the PDF on a website. I'm like, what is the point of doing that? It's totally unnecessary. Eventually you might want to go back and have almost like a highlight reel of stuff on your website. But I'm trying to find an article I wrote, which is going to give people, here it is. It's going to give people a breakdown of the pros and cons of each version. So I'll make sure I put that here. Well, I might have to put it in the private chat because I'm not sure.
And I can share it back out. Yeah, no problem.
There, I don't know how to put it in the chat for everyone. Okay.
Cool. Another question I wanted to grab was about methodologies, because like this, I'm sure people feel multiple sides on this. Like, should you mention methodologies like atomic design, like the different pieces you use? Is that something you put into your different portfolio components?
Yeah, I think it's always great to mention methodologies that you have used. So also to follow up with that, I think it's helpful to list software that you maybe have used. Obviously, some of that will be in your resume too, but I don't feel like it's duplicative when it's in your portfolio and your resume, because it only adds value, right? It just saves, and plus people might forget what they read on their resume, or maybe they only just skimmed the top half of the resume. So where possible, remember on the examples I showed you, there was that large text at the top, which I call a headline sentence. Try and weave into that headline sentence, like, next I conducted, next I created like a survey to 500 people using whatever survey tool you use, to try and sneak in, I don't know if that's the right word, but communicate the methodologies and software and things like that.
Thank you so much, Sarah. One question I wanted to bring up, with just a few moments left, is can you speak a bit to, because you mentioned the cycle of sabotage, I wrote that down.
Yes.
Yeah, can you speak a bit towards, like, I do like it. I like it a lot. Can you speak a bit more about that, just like combating perfectionism? Because I think that goes beyond just UX research and UX portfolios into just all design portfolios. It's a big problem. Yeah.
I'll have to find some links to things I just tweeted a couple of days ago, but I put something on LinkedIn. It has almost 600 likes, and it gives you like 6 super simple things you can do. The gist of it is, I feel like imposter syndrome is almost like a cop-out, almost, instead of just like dealing with it and moving on. It's like you have 2 choices when you start to feel inadequate or doubt your skills. And I also will start a project. This happened to me in the past 2 months or so. I was working on a project in this industry I knew nothing about. And it has to do with what do you call, like, fleet? So a fleet of vehicles. I don't know anything about trucks and stuff like that, but I was very nervous about this project. So it happens to me too. And you really have 2 choices. You can keep getting stuck and worrying and wallowing in these feelings, or you can just think to yourself, like, I'm just going to do this, and just kind of turn a blind eye to those feelings. It doesn't mean they don't exist, but I think you have to acknowledge those feelings and then make a conscious choice to think, I feel this way, and I am going to move on and not lose the momentum, instead of getting stuck in this wallowing or spiral thinking, as I sometimes call it. But I'm trying to find this. I also wrote an article about this too, but let me just grab this link from my LinkedIn.
And we can share it after as well. So because I know we're already quite a bit over on time, I could share that out via email, because it is relevant. I mean, we all face it, and I think we do it to insulate our egos. And I think you're so right. Like, you got to push through.
Yeah, you have to push through, and it's like, you can keep almost using it as an excuse. Maybe cop out wasn't the wrong word. It's almost like an excuse to not move forward. And in the tweet we'll send you, one of the things is like, you just have to take a line from Nike and just do it.
Well, with that, I know we didn't get to all questions, but we are at time, folks. For everyone who's still with us, that's Sarah. In a second, I want you to give some parting words, but for everyone who's still with us, just thank you, Sarah, for your time today. Thank you for sharing this wisdom and these tips. These are, I can't stress enough, like these are things that no matter where you are in your UX career, you should be thinking through these things, and these are tips that could benefit you. And as a person who is hiring, and especially if you're applying to Teachable, maybe you're watching this video and want to apply to Teachable, these are 6 ways that would help us better, be able to understand you and really get a feel for who you are as a designer. So thank you again, Sarah.
Yeah, and I would say too, Aaron, it helps you get a sense of who the person is as a designer, their skills and experience, and also what their ability to communicate their ideas is, because so often once you're hired, that skill is crucial to getting stakeholder buy-in for different concepts and stuff like that. So even though this is all about portfolios, it's more about being very confident in communicating your skills and experience and articulating not just what you did, but why you did it.
Thank you again, Sarah. Any last parting words of wisdom? I know we're going to sign off in just a second. Any last words of wisdom you want to leave the group with?
Last words of wisdom. Oh my gosh, I'm so stressed out. I would say stop comparing yourself to others. Like, get off the Google train, stop cruising Dribble, get off Pinterest, get off all the Instagram UX, vortex, and just unfollow a bunch of people and focus on you. Comparing yourself to others is not going to help you make your portfolio faster.
So true. Sarah, thank you again. We're going to sign off. Of course, we're going to sign off now. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you joining us today. And with that, bye, everybody.